Deep in the heart of a dense forest, officers stumble upon a heartbreaking scene. A German shepherd, tightly chained to a tree, his eyes filled with fear and desperation. Who left him there? And more importantly, why? But just as the officers step closer to free him, the dog does something unexpected. He growls, his ears perk up, sensing something they cannot see. Then, suddenly, rustling in the bushes. What was hiding in the shadows? The truth they were about to uncover would leave them absolutely stunned. Stay with us, because this is a rescue story like no other. Welcome to Wildlife Wonders. Today, we bring you an emotional yet unbelievable story of a canine German shepherd left abandoned in the woods. But as the officers try to rescue him, they uncover a terrifying secret. Stay with us till the end, because this is something you need to see. It was a cold, misty morning when Officer Mark's radio crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice was urgent, carrying an unusual report. Someone had anonymously tipped off the department about a police K9 found abandoned in a remote forest area. The details were vague, but one thing was clear. A German shepherd was in distress, tied to a tree, with no sign of its handler. Mark, a seasoned officer with over a decade of experience in K9 rescue, felt a sense of unease. Police dogs were never left alone like this. They were highly trained, deeply bonded to their handlers, and their disappearances were always a cause for concern. Was the handler injured? Had something gone terribly wrong? Wasting no time, Mark called for backup and assembled a team. Officers Ryan, Lisa, and Jake were quick to respond, loading up their patrol SUVs with medical kits, flashlights, and protective gear. The forest was about 30 miles from the city, and the journey would take nearly an hour. As they sped down the highway, Mark couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The road leading to the forest was narrow and unpaved, lined with towering trees whose branches swayed gently in the cold morning breeze. The deeper they drove, the quieter it became. Only the soft rustling of leaves and distant chirping of birds broke the eerie silence. Mark parked the SUV at the side of the road. The anonymous caller had not given an exact location, only a rough estimate. Near the abandoned cabin by the river. The officers grabbed their gear, checked their radios, and stepped into the dense woods. The deeper they went, the thicker the fog became. The crunch of leaves beneath their boots was the only sound accompanying them. Then they heard it. A faint whimper. Mark stopped in his tracks, holding up a hand to signal silence. The team froze, listening intently. The whimper came again, soft, pained, and coming from somewhere to their right. They quickened their pace, moving carefully through the thick undergrowth. And then they saw him. Tied to a rotting tree trunk with a short, frayed rope was a German shepherd. His fur was matted with dirt, his ribs slightly visible beneath his coat, and his ears twitched at every small noise around him. His eyes, once bright and alert, were filled with confusion, fear, and exhaustion. Lisa, the team's animal specialist, immediately noticed the dog's posture. He wasn't just scared, he was guarding something. Ryan knelt a few feet away, speaking in a soft, reassuring voice. "Hey, buddy, we are here to help. You are safe now." But the dog did not move. His deep brown eyes remained locked onto Mark, as if trying to communicate something. Jake took a step forward, reaching for the rope, but the dog let out a low, rumbling growl. It was not aggressive, but it was firm. A warning. Mark held up his hand. "Wait. He's trying to tell us something." Lisa scanned the area. The dog's stance, the way he kept looking past them, the tension in his muscles. It was clear. He was not just afraid. He was protecting something. Mark's instincts kicked in. He pulled out his flashlight and scanned the ground around them. That was when he noticed the disturbed soil, a patch of dirt that looked freshly dug just a few feet away. "Guys, there is something buried here." Jake and Ryan exchanged glances before stepping toward the spot. The dog's eyes flickered to the disturbed earth, then back at Mark. His body tensed, his tail stiff. He knew what was under there. Mark crouched down and slowly brushed away some of the loose dirt. Almost immediately, something metallic reflected the light. A small, rusted padlock. His heart pounded as he cleared away more dirt, revealing the edge of a wooden crate. Lisa gasped. "What the hell is this?" Mark carefully lifted the crate's cover, but it was nailed shut. Whatever was inside, someone had wanted to keep it hidden. The officers exchanged tense glances. This was no ordinary rescue. As Mark reached for his utility knife to pry the crate open, the German Shepherd suddenly whined loudly and began pulling against the rope. Lisa stepped forward, trying to calm him. "It is okay, buddy. We are going to help." But the dog did not stop. His eyes were pleading, his body trembling with urgency. Ryan cut the rope loose, and the dog immediately dashed forward, standing protectively over the crate, his body positioned defensively. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. "He does not want us to open it." Mark's hands froze on the crate's lid. The forest around them seemed to grow eerily silent. What could be inside that even a trained K9 was afraid of? Jake took a deep breath. Only one way to find out. With one final, forceful pull, the nails creaked, the wood splintered, and the lid popped open. Inside the crate, buried beneath layers of dirt and leaves, was something that made everyone's blood run cold. The tension in the air was thick as Officer Mark and his team took cautious steps toward the German Shepherd. Unlike most distressed dogs who either whimper in fear or lash out in aggression, this one did neither. He stood completely still. His deep brown eyes, wide with alertness, were locked onto the officers, as if he was trying to communicate something urgent. His ears twitched slightly at every small movement around them, but he did not bark, growl, or make any sudden moves. Lisa, the team's animal specialist, whispered, "Something is not right. He is not reacting like a normal rescue dog." Mark nodded. He had worked with K9 units before, and this was unlike any behavior he had ever seen. The dog was not just scared, he was waiting. Then it happened. A sharp rustling sound pierced the eerie silence. The bushes behind the dog trembled. Something was moving. Mark immediately raised his hand, signaling his team to stay alert. Jake, gripping his flashlight, scanned the area, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Ryan tightened his grip on his service weapon, while Lisa reached for a tranquilizer, just in case. The dog did not flinch. Instead, he took a single step forward, his muscles tensing, his gaze unwavering. It was as if he knew exactly what was hiding in those bushes. Mark's voice was steady but low. "Hold your positions. Do not make any sudden movements." The rustling grew louder, branches snapping under unseen weight. Something, or someone, was definitely there. Ryan swallowed hard. Could it be the dog's handler? Jake shook his head. No way. If it was his owner, the dog would have already reacted differently. He is protecting something, or someone. The German Shepherd let out a low, guttural whine, his body shifting slightly toward the movement. Lisa noticed something strange. The dog was not afraid. Instead, he seemed conflicted, like he wanted to go to whatever was in the bushes, but something was stopping him. Lisa whispered, "It is almost like he is torn between warning us and protecting whatever is over there." The team stood frozen as the rustling stopped abruptly. Silence. Complete, deafening silence. Even the sounds of the forest, the chirping birds, the distant rustle of the wind, had disappeared. Then a shadow moved. Just for a split second. A fleeting shape in the darkness. Mark barely caught the movement, but it was enough to send chills down his spine. Lisa gasped. "Did you see that?" Jake, his face pale, muttered, "I saw something, but I could not tell what it was." Ryan, breathing heavily, pointed toward the dog. "Look at him." The German Shepherd had lowered his head slightly, his ears pinned back, his tail stiff. His breathing was shallow, controlled. Mark had seen this stance before. This was not fear. This was submission. Lisa cautiously took a step closer to the dog, but before she could get near, He let out a soft but firm bark. One bark, not a warning, not aggression, a signal. The moment the bark echoed through the still air, the bushes trembled again. But this time it was different. The sound was not random. It was controlled, deliberate. Lisa's hands trembled as she whispered, "Oh my God, it is responding to him." Mark felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The dog was not just standing guard. He was connected to whatever was hiding in the shadows. But how? And why? Jake clenched his jaw. "We need to move in. Whatever is out there, we have to find out now." Mark nodded. "Stay sharp. We are not alone out here." Ryan and Jake carefully moved toward the bushes, their flashlights illuminating the dense thicket. Lisa stayed behind, trying to calm the dog. As the two officers approached, the bushes rustled once more. But this time, it was not trying to hide. It was moving away. Ryan's voice was tense. "It is running." Mark acted fast. "Move. Do not lose it." The team rushed forward, their boots crunching against the damp forest floor. The dog, now completely free, sprinted ahead of them, leading the charge. It was clear now. He wanted them to follow. And whatever was ahead, it was not just running, it was leading them somewhere. As one officer stepped forward to cut the rope, the German Shepherd suddenly twisted, his body tense, and barked aggressively. It was not an attack, it was a warning. The officers froze. The dog's deep, commanding bark echoed through the forest, sending a chill down their spines. He was not just reacting out of fear or instinct. He was trying to stop them. Mark exchanged glances with Lisa, who was still kneeling beside the dog, her hands hovering cautiously. The dog's ears were pinned back, his gaze locked onto something just beyond them. That was when Mark noticed it, a patch of earth that looked disturbed, barely covered with dry leaves. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but the German Shepherd had been standing in front of it the whole time, as if shielding it. Jake cautiously stepped forward and used his boot to clear away some of the leaves. The moment he did, his breath caught in his throat. A wooden crate lay beneath, half buried in the dirt. The edges were rough, worn by time, and in the dim morning light, they could see the faint outline of an old metal padlock keeping it shut. Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper. "What the hell is this?" The German Shepherd let out another low whine, his eyes flickering between the crate and the officers. He was desperate for them to understand. Mark knelt beside the crate, reaching out carefully to touch the lid. The wood was damp, soft in places where moisture had seeped in. "This has been here a while," he muttered, "but not too long. Someone buried it recently." Ryan grabbed a crowbar from his utility belt and handed it to Mark. "Only one way to find out what is inside." As Mark wedged the crowbar beneath the lid, the German Shepherd whined again, stepping back but never taking his eyes off the box. He knew what was in there. He remembered. With a sharp crack, the wood splintered, and the lid gave way. Mark slowly lifted it open, his heart pounding. A strong, musty smell rose from within, and as the light from their flashlights illuminated the contents, everyone froze. Inside the crate were several items wrapped in old cloth. Mark reached in, unwrapping one of them carefully. What he found made his blood run cold. A police badge, not just any badge. A K-9 unit badge. Lisa gasped. "No, this cannot be." Mark unwrapped another item, a tattered uniform with a name tag still attached. The letters were faded, but they were still legible. Officer Daniel Carter. Silence fell over the group. Jake's face was pale. Daniel Carter. He went missing a year ago. The realization hit them all at once. Daniel Carter had been a K-9 officer, reported missing under mysterious circumstances. His disappearance had been a cold case. No leads, no evidence. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Mark turned to the dog, who was staring at the crate, his body still, his breathing slow but steady. The pain in his eyes was unmistakable. This was his dog, Lisa whispered. This German Shepherd. He was Daniel Carter's partner. The weight of the discovery sank in. This was not just an abandoned dog. He was a loyal partner who had stayed behind, waiting for someone to find the truth. Jake continued digging through the crate, his hands trembling slightly. Beneath the uniform was a gun, rusted but still intact. And beneath that, a notebook. Mark flipped it open. The pages were worn and smudged, but Daniel's handwriting was still visible. As he scanned the entries, a disturbing pattern emerged. Daniel had been investigating something. The last entry was dated one day before he went missing. The words were hurried, as if written in fear. "I think they know I am onto them. If anything happens to me, it was not an accident. My dog knows. He saw everything." Mark's heart pounded. This was not just a random disappearance. Daniel had been silenced. Ryan exhaled sharply. Whoever did this, they never expected the dog to survive. Lisa looked at the German shepherd, her voice breaking. And all this time, he stayed here, protecting the truth. The dog let out a soft whimper, stepping closer to Mark. He lowered his head slightly, nudging the notebook with his nose. He wanted them to finish what Daniel had started. Mark clenched his jaw. He had seen many cases in his years as an officer, but this was different. This was personal. He turned to his team. "We are reopening this case. Right now." The German shepherd wagged his tail for the first time. Because after all this time, someone had finally listened. What do you think was inside the crate? What are your guesses before we reveal the shocking truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see if you can figure it out before we do.